On Monday, July 7th, Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez, the Consul General of Mexico in Los Angeles, was about to start his weekly audiencia pública when he heard a helicopter flying overhead. He began as usual, greeting some 20 or 25 community members who had shown up on the third and busiest floor of the consulate to share their concerns and ask questions. These days, they almost all want to discuss immigration raids in the city and what the consulate can do to protect Mexican citizens. As the gathering went on, Gonzalez Gutierrez heard, on top of the helicopter, loud voices and a general commotion outside. He kept talking, standing in front of a Mexican flag and a bright orange wall emblazoned with the official seal of Mexico. When the event concluded, his deputy consul general approached him and held up his phone, which was playing videos of beige military trucks, federal officers on horseback, protesters shouting them down, and Mayor Karen Bass saying that the officers needed to leave. Gonzalez Gutierrez realized that the melee was taking place in MacArthur Park, directly across the street from the consulate. He walked back up to the microphone he had used for the audiencia and said that an immigration raid was occurring. He didn't want to cause a panic, but he invited everyone inside the building to stay there, and everyone outside, people waiting in line for their appointments, vendors selling food and small Mexican flags, to come in. They would be safe there, he told them. The consulate is inviolable under international law, a sanctuary within the city of Los Angeles. When Gonzalez Gutierrez first moved to Los Angeles in the late 1980s, he bought a used Ford Pinto for $1,000. He enjoyed driving it through the historic Figueroa Street tunnels, which were constructed in the 1930s and have the seal of Los Angeles etched into their facade. The image in the lower left-hand corner is similar to the one on the Mexican flag, an eagle devouring a serpent. It's an acknowledgement that Los Angeles was and remains a Mexican city. Seeing the city seal helped Gonzalez Gutierrez feel at home. When you are here, he says, if you're a Mexican national, you realize that you belong, that to a great extent, this is a Mexican city. And that is from The Fight for Mexican Los Angeles by Geraldo Gadava from The New Yorker, the issue of July 23rd, 2025. I'm Joshua Treviño, and this is The Hard Country.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Hard Country. Usually on the show, we like talking about the relationships between Mexico and America and Texas, but today we're bringing California into that conversation. And on top of that, Mexico, the government is celebrating 700 years of the founding of Tenochtitlan, and all of this begs the question, what is Mexico? What does it mean to be Mexican? And here to break all that down today with me is Joshua Treviño. How are you doing, Josh?
I'm well, Ariana. Good to see you again.
You know, I'm really excited about all these kinds of things layering on top of each other as we try to answer these questions. To begin with, I mean, let's start with the opening monologue that you just read right now. I was really shocked when reading that article from that line there at the end about Los Angeles was and will remain a Mexican city. How did you feel whenever you read those lines?
It's a dangerous game they're playing. Los Angeles is an American city, but it was founded not as a Mexican city, but as a Spanish one. We have to understand that very, very clearly. Late 18th century, part of the Spanish push northward from the Viceroyalty of New Spain. It is the same broad, not the same specific, but the same broad historical push that brought your ancestors in mind to South Texas, which is now South Texas, and Old Nuevo Santander. And there were multiple pushes northward. The first one really in the late 16th century was to New Mexico, but it's by the 18th century that you really get colonization pushing up north into what's now Southern California, Alta California, as they called it at the time. And this conceit now that Los Angeles is sort of originally and by its nature constitutively a Mexican city, we have to understand it first and foremost as a complete fiction. The historical grounding certainly is what it is. Obviously the name Los Angeles is Spanish. There's a much longer name. It's named after Our Lady. I've forgotten the full original Spanish name, which I promised myself I'd memorize for the show. But L.A. What we have to understand fundamentally is that modern Los Angeles is not a creation of Mexicans. Modern Los Angeles is a creation predominantly of American Midwesterners. And that's why it's a great world-class city now. Well, increasingly less great given leftist misgovernance in California and LA in general. But what this narrative is deployed to do is really asserting a claim. and it is a territorial claim. We have to understand that, not just a population claim. It's a territorial claim to land and space in an American city that the Mexicans themselves would never tolerate if it went the other way around. But the rules are different for them, you see, and so we get this fluff from the New Yorker, which could care less about American sovereignty, about a Mexican LA. It's something we have to push back against.
You know, it was just interesting because Carlos Gonzalez Gutierrez, he's the Consul General of Mexico that's stationed in LA.
Correct.
And this article is kind of just walking through, as he would see it, the plight of Mexicans in Los Angeles because of the ICE raids,
right? And
how horrible it is that they're, from his point of view, that these communities, as he's putting it, are being disrupted. But at the same time, it's also interesting to me that he talks about, I think I have it here, about the Mexican pride and identity that they still have. And he says, quote, "In Mexico, we're deeply proud of you, of your work, your bravery, your dignity, and your identity as Mexicans."
Of course.
Which makes me wonder, well, then why are you here in America?
Why are you here in the United States?
Yeah. Like, I would say, like, as an American, you know, if someone's visiting or traveling abroad, cool, you can be proud to be American. But if you're illegally in another country, come back to America if you're supposed to be here.
Well, look, if you've spent generations, and particularly the last generation, fostering this narrative that the United States possesses this land illegitimately, which it does not, we do not, then of course, you know, you're gonna foster this narrative that if you are a Mexican national and you're in California or Nevada or Texas, that your presence there is legitimate by reason of blood and soil, right?
And do you think that's the claim he's making philosophically?
100%. Yeah, no, it absolutely is, and it's something that we have to understand that there's multiple levels to this. One level, I think, which is driving a lot of the rest. It's not purely material. I mean, there is a philosophical argument, as bogus as it is, on the Mexican side. But the current Mexican regime has failed to deliver growth. You know, that's something we should understand. It's not just because of the pandemic. Growth in Mexico is extremely anemic. I forget the exact figures, but it's under 2%. Actually, I think it's closer to 1% annually. It's kind of, they eke out like the bare minimum of growth necessary from year to year. And so as a consequence, the role and the importance of remittances in propping up the economy just becomes bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. By the way, in an economic scenario like that, cartels also become more important as well, because you've got to get funding, especially if you're the political elite, wherever you can. And so what we have to understand is a lot of these individuals that the Mexican Consulate is defending. And look at what it's doing in the story. And this is happening not just in California, but all over the country. The consulate is actively providing safe harbor from accountability for the laws of the United States. They're advocating for those who break the laws of the United States. I mean, it is walking right up to the line, and I would argue crossing the line into what the Mexicans would call intervención in the internal affairs of the United States. And this is cloaked in the language of defense of our nationals, which is a legitimate diplomatic role, but it goes much beyond that, because none of these people are here legitimately. And when you have a mechanism that acts on behalf of that population, it issues identity cards, it provides safe harbor, it gives warning of ICE raids. That, I think, in a self-respecting republic, which the Trump administration has done a lot to bring back. But this is the condition under which you would P&G a diplomat, in my view. And for the viewers, it's persona non grata. Let's kick them out. And so I think the end state for things like this, especially with the brazenness of going to the New Yorker and having an article like this written, which really does assert a positive claim to a portion of the United States enacted by the presence of an illegal alien population, this consulate should be shut down. That's the lesson that I take from this article. The Mexican consulate in Los Angeles should not exist by virtue of the activities documented by themselves in this article.
I feel like the article, though, goes a little bit further than just like staking a claim on not only the city and the illegal immigrants who reside within it, but also some of the American people of Mexican heritage within that city. So he's talking about the people who are actually the ones protesting, and it's the people who are a few generations in, and it says, quote, "They're the ones protesting to protect their parents, waving the Mexican flag to honor that part of their identity." And the reason that this particularly stood out to me is, so I have one of my grandmas is more conservative, the other one is much more liberal, the NSNBC type,
But you love them both.
Yes.
Right.
the cooking for both is amazing. So you
No doubt.
gotta love grandma.
Yeah.
But one of the things that my more liberal grandma was, this is one of her most base takes that I really appreciate from her, but she gets really upset whenever we're like driving through a neighborhood and she sees people with Mexican flags outside of their homes, especially if it's a Mexican flag without also an American flag there. And she takes huge offense to that because she was born in the U.S. but spent a lot of her childhood in Mexico as well. But her whole thing is like, she'll talk about you have your education because you're here in America. Americans are the ones who cared enough about you to make sure that you have an education like this. That gives you the opportunities to work. That's the reason that you have money, that you have your life here. So why are you waving another country's flag?
Indeed.
So I really appreciated that her opinion, which I think really deeply contrasts the way that he sees Mexicans in America.
Well, so there's a question that's raised by this. So both of your grandmothers are from South Texas, right?
No, one's from the San Antonio area.
One's from San Antonio.
Yes.
Okay, but they're both Texan, though.
Yes.
I would say, but they both have roots in if you go back a generation or two, correct me if I'm wrong, that go back to the Rio Grande Valley, Tamaulipas.
I don't think the other one does. We found out that the Silva side was from an extra person named Silva on my mom's side apparently as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So maybe they originally, but I think they came from. I thought also from Monterrey area, but straight to San Antonio. So we need to look into that.
Well, if they're from Monterrey, actually, it gets
still
to my
ties
point.
in? Okay.
It absolutely still ties in. So the question is, when you see this rhetoric here, and in the article he talks about California being the most important state to Mexico, which I kind of wanted to pump the brakes on that one. But all this engagement, here's an interesting question to ask. There is an answer to it. Why don't we see this in Texas? Do you know?
Oh.
What's your guess?
My guess is we developed our own identity as something that's separate, but what would you say?
Well, that's correct. How did we do that? Do you remember? I'm just curious.
I'll let you share with the viewers instead.
For now. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Because we have a qualitatively different population in Texas. The population in Texas, you're an example of it. I'm an example of it. There's several million other Texans who are an example of it. It is a continuous, for the most part. I mean, there are significant exceptions, but the core Hispanic stock, I won't even say Mexican at this point because it comes from Spanish colonization, but the core stock in Texas and South Texas in particular came in the 18th century. Same era in which Los Angeles is founded, all the way out west. But that population is still there. The original California population in California is there are vestiges of it, but it's not a numerically meaningful cohort there. When you're looking at California Mexicans, we've done a research study on this here at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. We'll have to link it in the show notes below, so I'll make sure I get you that. But we've done this Mexican migration project in which we looked at what the Mexican state of origin was for each of the individual U.S. states. And what we found is that in Texas, people are from, they're norteños, they're from Tamaulipas, they're from Nuevo León, Monterrey, in your San Antonio grandma's case. And that's it. It is that population that is organically part of Texas anyway, just by reason of history and geography. California is completely different. California has a population that is from, I'm going by memory here, it's from Guerrero, it's from Oaxaca, it's from Jalisco, it is Chiapas, states all down south, not organically related historically to California. And so what this means is they're fairly recent arrivals from a generational perspective. And this is not a disparagement of them, I'm just saying this from a descriptive standpoint. They're not rooted in the same way. When you go back to the valley or when I drive south to Laredo, we are on land that has been home to family for 300 years. That is true for a vanishingly few number of Mexican Americans in California right now. And so what that means is there's a fundamentally different civics that apply to it. That's why the Morenista regime feels free to play in California politics and has a very difficult time doing so in Texas. That's why the Hispanic population in California still continues to vote Democrat. Not that it's a partisan issue, but it's a good metonym for the rest. And why the Mexican American population, which is qualitatively different in Texas, is going right at a rapid clip and becoming one of the reddest areas of the country. And that's why we don't have this in Texas. That's why, there is a Mexican consulate. There's one in Austin. I believe there's one in San Antonio. I think we have 4. No, actually, I think we have 5 if you throw in El Paso. Those consulates would gladly do the same things that the consulate in LA does, but they don't have the same purchase because as a consequence of our rootedness, we're also more Americanized.
Right.
Thank God for that, right? Yeah.
I think Texans are distinctly I don't know, almost more American than the rest of America by
Well, the
virtue of being
Texas-Mexico
Texan.
relationship, right? Yeah,
Right.
it applies in a lot of different ways.
But then, I mean, I wonder then if the reason why they described California as the most important state to them is because ideologically it's the most important, and a lot of their ideology hinges on a state in America supporting the same kind of values that they have.
100%. 100%. That's exactly right. To the extent that Morena and the Mexican left is simply aping what they see in American progressivism, which is true a lot. I mean, you can catch the flight to Mexico City and you can see it almost everywhere. California to them is like the beau ideal of all of that. It's not Texas for them.
Right. So then, I mean, this then again comes down to that question of what does it mean to be, well, Mexican at all, because there's having, I mean, it seems like they're in some way claiming the people who've been here for a few generations there in California. They're somewhat, seems like he's trying to claim the land of Los Angeles as well. But that brings up this question of what does it mean to be Mexico? Because as he said, it's Mexican. He didn't describe it as Spanish, even though it was settled, as he said, by the Spanish.
Never will, yeah.
But that goes along with something recently from Claudia Sheinbaum and the a celebration in Mexico recently.
Yes.
So she posted on X, basically they were celebrating, as she put it, quote, "We commemorate 700 years of the greatness of Mexico Tenochtitlan. Its legacy is not ruin or nostalgia, it is hope. A seed that continues to sprout, fighting, teaching us that history cannot be erased. The true future can only be built if we courageously embrace all that we were and all that we are." And at the celebration, there was a video linked in it that just showed a lot of, I guess, Aztec heritage stuff happening all within their main center. But what do you make of that, of that 700 years of the greatness of Mexico Tenochtitlan? And that combination of that word, too, was
of course
striking.
Yeah, of course. Of course, we said in a previous show that, we're going to predict it here first, that they'll eventually change the name of Mexico City back to Tenochtitlan. I will stand by that prediction. We'll see how long it takes. It's been interesting to see this 700th anniversary celebration, and look, I would say from a civic standpoint, it's worth commemorating. I mean, it is a very old city. It's been around for from the traditional dating about 700 years. Now, 500 of those years. It was mostly Spanish and then Mexican, and so I think to your point. They've answered this question affirmatively over and over and over again. To be a real Mexican to them is to be something other than what you and I are. To be a real Mexican to them is to be somebody rooted in this Nahua, Aztec, Tenochtitlan heritage, which frankly represents a lot of the Valley of Mexico, but not a lot of the rest of the country, right? And it is sort of this philosophy, this ideology of indigenismo that holds that the only authentic expression of the nation is the indigenous one, which is contrary to, I would say, kind of the traditional understanding of what Mexico was in the post-independence period, which is of course the mestizaje nation. It's the mixed nation. It's Malinche and Cortez and their child being the first modern Mexican, so to speak. So it deserves commemoration, but the way in which it's been commemorated is chilling. Can I read a statement?
Yes, please.
An English
go ahead.
translation of a statement, and I ask apologies from the podcast audience. I have to read this from my phone. But of course, for those of you who've been to Mexico City, the Zócalo, which is the main square, it was the main plaza in Spanish times. It was also in Aztec times the main plaza, and so when you go in at one end of it, there used to be what's called the Templo Mayor. You can actually see the ruins of it now. They've got it on display, and there's a variety of windows, and you can walk through a lot of the ruins. You can also see the human sacrifice skull racks that are still there. That sort of show us the heart of what Aztec religion and frankly Aztec civics was, which was really a cult of blood that would have been familiar in a Canaanite context. But this is the heritage that the Mexican regime wants to claim. And so one of the things that they did is they ended up projecting images of the Templo Mayor onto the Catholic cathedral on the Zócalo, which is built upon the ruins of it. And what it was, very deliberately, they called it Memoria Luminosa. And so what it was very deliberately was essentially a government-sponsored desecration of the cathedral, really making the assertion that they're going to take back this space, which has belonged, spiritually and otherwise to the Catholic Church for over half a millennium at this point.
And was the Catholic Church built on top of what was originally the Aztec place of worship, I guess?
The Templo Mayor was pulled down,
Right.
and the cathedral was built atop it, which is also a practice with a long and storied history, especially when you have a site that was devoted to the fundamental sacramental with a lowercase s. The fundamental sacramental that was practiced there is the ripping out of hearts out of living people. And so, I would argue that the cathedral was an improvement in that case. But the government doesn't agree, and so they projected images of the Templo Mayor into the cathedral. So there was this very heartbreaking communique. I won't read the whole thing from the liaison office for the Metropolitan Cathedral of Mexico. By the way, the reason there's a liaison office is because the church isn't actually allowed to own anything in Mexico under the 1917 Constitution, and so it's
the church there, the church there doesn't actually belong to the Catholic Church. It's just being used by them, or how it belongs to the government.
That's
though?
the legal fiction, right?
Okay.
Is that it's all on national patrimony, and then the Catholic Church is allowed to use these spaces, which is, from a liberty standpoint, is entirely abhorrent. But
Right.
if you're the heir to an ideology that wants to suppress worship and independent thought, then of course it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
And so from this memorandum that they put out protesting this, they said, again, I won't read the whole thing, but a paragraph if I may.
Yeah, please.
During this show, Memoria Luminosa, various legends and images have been projected that deeply offend the faith and fundamental principles that we as professing Catholics hold. Regardless of the division between religious and political freedoms, both protected by our Constitution, freedom of expression of ideas within their respective domains and spaces is respected. However, it is reprehensible that specifically anti-Catholic messages are being projected onto this holy cathedral church. And then they go and they say these messages deeply wound the devotion of the Mexican people, and it's sort of this impotent protest.
And who put out this statement?
This was it's called the liaison office between essentially the bishop in Mexico City, or at least the administration of this particular cathedral, put this statement out. And look, the government could not care less. And in fact, the outrage of the Catholic faithful, or the remnants of it thereof in Mexico, to them is a bonus. Like, that's a feature, not a bug. And as you and I have discussed on the show before, when you go there to the Zócalo, when you go to the Metropolitan Cathedral, disruptive ceremonies, noises, interventions right outside the church are to disrupt Mass is a commonplace. Persecution is saying too much, but it's not far off. And that too, I think, illuminates the nature of the regime. And that's what I would argue the 700th anniversary thing, which again is totally legitimate from a historical standpoint to commemorate.
Because it's a commemoration of the city itself, right?
Well, it's a commemoration of the city itself, and then and then of course the Scheinbaum regime and the Morenistas in general did this as well. Like, this is going to be their exposition of what they think the real Mexico is.
Right.
The real Mexico, again, and not that you and I are the benchmark of the Mexican nation, but I think the point is that the Mexican nation has many benchmarks. But for the people ruling Mexico, we're not it. And there are millions like us in Mexico who are also excluded from that definition. And that's storing up a time bomb for the future for the Mexican polity.
I mean, it's just the thing I just keep thinking about is that part of Mexico becoming Mexico, I think, was building the cathedral on that spot.
Of course.
And then now there's this reversal of no, we're putting what we think Mexico ought to be, which was on top of that again.
Well, who's the definitional figure, the hinge of Mexican history, the hinge of all Mexican history, who cements and affirms the synthesis that becomes the Mexican nation? You know exactly who this is.
What do you say? Our Lady of Guadalupe?
Exactly,
or what?
that's right. It's the Virgin of Guadalupe, right? Who appears the decade.
I was going to say that, Juan Diego.
the decade after the conquest, and of course, to bring it full circle, her nickname is La Morena. Because she's colored like you. You're a morena too. You're not La Morena, but
Hey, I'll take any compliment to the
sure,
similarity to Mary.
Any parallel you can draw. But
but she was she appeared to them looking like an Aztec person would back then, right?
100%. At Tepeyac, that's 100% right. And it is no accident, in fact, absolutely deliberate, that the fundamentally atheistic, communistic, left-wing regime that rules Mexico now calls itself Morena. It's that appropriation.
I didn't even think about that connection or that usurping, I guess, of the word. And now they're usurping the sacred ground of the cathedral.
That's when I first noticed them, actually, was several years back. when I was on the pilgrimage route to the Basilica of the Virgin of Guadalupe, and it's fairly common as you go through these barrios and colonias to see these essentially like these pilgrim relief tents. I didn't walk that far, so I didn't need. But you saw it, and this was actually prior to the 2018 election. But you saw these tents with the Morena branding, and honestly, at first I thought, oh, that's interesting. It must be a church organization because Morena. And when I realized it was a left-wing party, and my initial thought was, that's extremely savvy. It's extremely clever. It is something that the Mexican left has never before done, and it gave me a false impression of Morena too, by the way. But I thought the Mexican left has never before made its case from a traditionalist, pro-religion standpoint. So I kind of put on like my Sohrab Ahmari helmet and thought that oh well, this is going to be a Catholic workers' left, right? Which is a delusion that I adhered to until effectively late 2019 and realized I was totally wrong about it. But
I guess their marketing works then, like using that name and
if you have a low information voting base, why not?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess in light of all of this happening in Mexico, there is a little bit of, well, I think good news, interesting at the very least, with a local mayor from Mexico City removing 2 statues. So what happened there and what's happening?
It's very interesting. So Mexico City, in its governance, has these colonias, these delegaciones. And so the leaders, you should think of them in the sense of like New York City boroughs, basically. Okay. So they're sub-governance units.
Right, because Mexico City is huge.
Right. Well, Mexico City, 20 to 30 million in the metro area, depending on how you want to count it. So it's gigantic. So there's obviously subunits of governance and sort of these delegaciones, the boroughs, to use the inexact term, is where people actually live, and it's sort of where governance actually touches you. And so there's one at the center. It's called Cuauhtémoc, after the last Aztec emperor, and the woman who's alcalde there is the mayor, Alessandro Rojo de la Vega, and she comes from essentially a fusion party between the PAN and the PRI, so she's not Morenista. But one of her predecessors was a guy named Ricardo Monreal, who's in the Mexican Senate right now. He's a big deal in Morena. We should make clear who Monreal is. Monreal has been one of the major sources of anti-American rhetoric over the past couple of years, and there's a reason for it, and the reason for it is this is just my supposition, but I think it's a defensible one. His brother, who's governor of Zacatecas, is strongly rumored. This is Mexico, so strong rumors. Don't take it to the bank, but it's as much as we're going to get. But it's strongly rumored to be on the payroll of the Sinaloa cartel, or at least in league with them. So Monreal's got he regularly comes up in conversation. I can say this firsthand. When I go to Mexico. Whenever there's a conversation about major national politicians with narco ties, Monreal's name is on the list. Whether it's true or not, I mean, who can say at this point? But maybe we should establish a framework for investigating that. That might be something that the government can do. So his daughter, Carolina, decides to run for alcalde of Cuauhtémoc. He himself was the alcalde earlier, and he had installed in 2017 a statue of Fidel Castro and Che Guevara sitting on a bench, because apparently this is the bench at which Castro and Che Guevara met in, I forget the year, 1959 perhaps?
55.
Oh, 55, I apologize.
They apparently had a great conversation
there. They
had
a great conversation there, so it's etched in history, these two guys who just, and they were united by a simple dream, which was to shoot millions. Right, and so like they
dreams really do bring people together,
and they come true in their case.
Yeah.
But these two horrific people, they do, and so Monreal, who is a man of the left in the worst possible way, installs a statue. Rojo de la Vega, Alessandro Rojo de la Vega, has just ripped them out. And so it's a big deal now, and there's many levels to this. Can I go in depth on this?
Please, this is what people listen to the show for. Let's break this open.
There's many levels to this. The individual that she beat to become alcalde is Monreal's.
And that's the word for mayor, right?
Or mayor. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's mayor. The individual that she beat in the 2024 election was Monreal's daughter, Carolina.
Wow.
And there was a lot of activity.
And it was her family who first put it in place, or put the statue up, right?
It was her father who put it in place.
Okay.
So she walked in.
Alessandra?
Well, no, not Alessandra, but Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Carolina, Monreal thought that it was going to be hers by right?
Oh,
and so
I see.
she did not count on Alessandra. A couple of interesting things happened. First of all, in May of 2024, prior to the election, somebody tried to kill Alessandra Rojo de la Vega. Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Fired multiple shots. They caught the gunman. And the gunman, interestingly enough, I haven't been able to find out what happened to him since. But he, at least for a brief moment, he went on record saying that somebody had paid him to do it. So it was a contracted hit, very common in Mexico. And of course, it tends to happen to people who run against Morena candidates. So somebody tried to kill.
Lots of coincidences,
It's
right?
just very coincidental, right?
Yeah.
So you trip and you fall on a bunch of bullets, and then that's kind of the end for you.
That's what does.
And so that happened, and then Alessandra actually said at one point that the only reason Catalina was running was because of her father, that she'd be a nobody without her father. And believe it or not, Catalina pursued a case in the courts on the grounds of gender violence against Alessandra for saying that she was only there because of her dad, which is manifestly true. So if there's anybody watching in Mexico right now, please sue me. Because I would love to fight that court case, but I also agree.
But I'm sorry, they're getting sued in Mexico for gender violence?
Gender violence, yes.
That's
the absurdity of it.
Weird thing that you can sue on.
The absurdity of it is palpable, right? Because the law is written such that if you insult the daughter of a major politician, there's going to be hell to pay for that. But if you're a narco who chops up a woman and dumps her in a cement truck, nothing's going to happen. Like, there's no accountability.
Well, that's because they kill probably equally, right? So they're not discriminating with the...
Sure, yeah. No, that's not even true. So, yes, she ripped out the statue, and Claudia Sheinbaum has lost her mind over it and protested because, of course, I mean, look, we have to believe these people. This is what I tell policymakers when we talk to them. We have to believe them. When they say that they admire Fidel Castro, when they say they admire communist dictators, it's because that represents their aspiration. It's really who they are, and this is a great illuminating moment for that.
Yeah, take people at their word or by the statues that they put up, maybe. But there's one quote that I really appreciated from Alessandra, and whenever she was talking about her reasoning for taking the statues down, and she says, governing isn't about choosing which victims to show solidarity. And my notes next to that was, Yas Queen. So I really appreciated her framing.
Yeah. Well, Claudia herself has pulled down multiple statues. Christopher Columbus.
Right, and I think that she was also pointing out the hypocritical nature of that Claudia Sheinbaum was criticizing taking these two statues down, but has taken many down herself.
It's one-way governance, and it always has been for them. Yeah.
So do you think that demonstrates, I guess, that there's still a coalition in Mexico that's fighting for, I guess, to uphold what you and I would say Mexico actually means and what it was founded for?
In candor, I don't know what Mexico actually means, and I think as an American, although I'm proud of my Mexican heritage, I think that is a question for Mexican nationals. They've got to decide what that
for themselves what that means,
what that proper order then for the nation is. I mean, I think there's been several answers proposed in Mexican history, some of them better than others. Right now, the answer being proposed is fundamentally wrong, and it will not lead to the flourishing of the Mexican nation in any way. But what we should concern ourselves with on the U.S. side is how to protect ourselves from that dysfunction. And I think that's a useful question to ask, kind of to bring it back full circle. The article in the New Yorker, again, we'll post a link to it in the show description, about the Mexican consulate, interfering, working against American laws, working against American law enforcement, working to destroy the fabric of American society, including the society of Mexican Americans like you and I. That's the thing that we ought to focus on. There's got to be consequences, and there's got to be prevention from this regime that is effectively lawless, imposing itself upon us.
And I think interfering with American function and governance directly in LA.
100%.
So then, I guess, since you said you're not, the person to answer, what does it mean to be Mexico or Mexican? What does this mean for American to have Mexican heritage? How do we look at ourselves within this?
Look, I mean, we're very fortunate to be in the United States. It's a checkered history. Some of it's positive, a lot of it's not, honestly. But at the end of the day, there's a reason that Mexicans come here and Americans don't go there, except to retire and vacation. And if you're going to build a life, if you're going to live in dignity, nobody chooses Mexico over the United States. We're still the destination, and that says everything. It is the revealed preference that tells everything.
So if people want to keep up with some of the research that the Texas Public Policy Foundation is doing on this, or your other research, where can people go?
TexasPolicy.com, as always. We've got a lot of interesting research and commentary that's coming out this fall. If I could take just a moment, The big issue that is confronting U.S. Mexico relations right now is going to be the renegotiation and the reauthorization of USMCA, which is the successor to NAFTA. So watch this space. We're going to be talking about it. We're going to be looking at whether or not the United States should reauthorize it. Can I give you a spoiler?
Please.
We shouldn't, unless the Mexicans grant serious security concessions for the first time, which must include finally turning upon the political figures that aid the cartels in that country.
Right. Well, I guess we're going to have to do another breakdown on that in another episode.
Absolutely.
But for today, any other things that you want to add before we conclude for today?
No, thank you for doing this, Ariana.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was it was a great breakdown. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This has been The Hard Country, and we'll see you next time.